they took her to look down at the earth. She goes, it's kind of like if you look up at the night sky, Ma, and you see the stars. It's like that in reverse. We see your starlight. We see your light. We see God's light in you.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God. We see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention. Have you noticed? Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little, God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome to episode 102. Hope you're holding up okay as we share Lent together. Everybody is getting Lent. Everybody's out in the desert right now. Everybody is just having everything stripped away. Everything stripped away. It's getting more silent and more silent and more silent. The song, there's always a song, isn't there? Song bubbled up in my head this week, and you know, songs bubble up seemingly out of nowhere. Well, the song was John Denver's Country Roads. Why? How's it start? Almost Heaven, West Virginia. Hello, West Virginia. Almost Heaven, West Virginia. I thought, why am I getting that song? Well, God knows what I knows, and He certainly, or if I don't know it, He's going to make sure that I know it. So what do I know about West Virginia, especially of late? I know that West Virginia was the last state to have someone diagnosed with this coronavirus. Well, isn't that interesting? Are they the smallest state? No. I think I read 38th. That sound right? 38th state, most populous. So not the smallest, and yet, but they were the last to have somebody diagnosed. Is there a message in that? Is God saying something in that? Well, you know what I did? I went looking for research, and there's a Pew Research. Pew Research did a study on this, and they looked throughout the U.S., throughout the world, actually. And here's the question they were asking. How important is God to you? Are you a believer? Do you worship on Sunday? Do you pray every day? Would you say God is important in your life on a daily basis? Those kinds of questions to find out where the hotbeds were of worship, of belief in God. Well, outside the Southern Bible Belt, guess the number one state for being on God's side? Yeah, Almost Heaven, West Virginia. Can we learn something from that? Is God sending us a message? Does it translate to the world? More on that later in this episode, okay? Episode 102 of Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. But I can't wait to introduce you to Kelley and her story. Kelley has so many stories, we're not going to put them all in this podcast. We'll share the rest of them on another podcast. But in this episode, you want to talk about an answer to prayer. Of all the episodes, I don't know if we've had a more dramatic answer in a huge way to a prayer, and God making a statement. Who does He make a statement in this episode? So this is perfect for this episode. He's making such a huge statement. If we look up, not just in, but up during this most severe Lent.
Hello.
Well, hey, don't worry. You didn't have to comb your hair. It's FaceTime audio. So there you go. How did you find the podcast?
I was listening to Audible, Chicken Soup for the Soul books, like, 101 Miracles. And because I love stories like that, too. I love, people sharing that God is still around. That's why you're my favorite podcast, because you say a lot of the things that I think, And I'm like, wow, I can't believe he's saying, God's still busy. God's still around. I'm like, I say that all the time,
Now, Kelley here, from the beginning, has always had God with her. I mean, literally had God with her.
And I somehow got it in my head that I had God in a bottle. And I carried this little glass bottle with me, had it in my little blankets with me and everything. And I was telling everybody, I'm going to be fine. God's in the bottle.
Now, why would she do that? Well, she had some health issues. And so she figured she needed God. So at age 4, she's got this little bottle with God inside. And she would tell everybody, I've got God in a bottle. He's here to help me.
God's in the bottle. I can hear Him. He talks to me. I'm not going to be scared.
One day, Kelley received a nudge from God. The nudge was, you got to let me out of the bottle. I need to go help other people too. Other children need help. The world needs help. I need to get out of the bottle.
Time to let God out of the bottle. And I really didn't want to, because I kind of got attached to Him.
So at that point, Kelley went to talk to her mom, who was fixing dinner.
I kept tugging on her apron. Ma, God says I got to do it now. So they took me out on the back porch. And this part, to be honest, I don't clearly remember. So this part here, I'm going based on my parents' recollection of the story. But I went out on the back porch, set the bottle on the railing, gave it a hug, gave it a kiss, said a little prayer, thank God for being with me, opened up the cork, and to my mother's dying day, she swore she saw something come up out of that bottle, like a light, and then gone. She goes, I had no belief at all in what you were saying, I'll be honest. She goes, but I swear to you, I saw something come like a fairy flicker of light. It was very quick, and then it was gone.
So God was finally out of the bottle to help others. But throughout Kelley's life, God has never left Kelley, and you'll hear about that. And as I mentioned, there'll be other stories in another podcast, but I want to focus in on a couple of stories here. Kelley, as I mentioned, has had a number of health issues. She's vitamin D resistant. Her body just won't absorb the vitamin D, and so she didn't develop the way other kids did.
But back then, my legs were bowed because of the weight bearing and the weakened bones. So I had little bowed legs. I was like a little cowgirl. And they broke both of them when I was 7 and tried to straighten them. So I had big plaster casts on both my legs. I had to learn how to walk all over again.
I remember hearing growing up, rickets. Look out for rickets. You got to have strong bones.
They used to call my disease vitamin D resistant rickets. But I started to realize because I couldn't run around and keep up with the other kids, I became kind of a book nerd and I became very intellectual. I kind of thought in my mind, well, my body may not be that great, but my brain is really good.
In terms of faith, Kelley was baptized Catholic, but never received her first communion or the other sacraments.
I was the very sickly child, the youngest of 5, but I was recovering from surgery and she, we'll get to it. And being the youngest, they never did.
At about age 12, Kelley noticed that everybody seemed to think that they had the answer. If they were Catholic, they had the answer. Baptists had the answer. Lutherans had the answer. Methodist. It's like, nope, I've got the answer. And she thought, well, not everybody can have the right answer. So she started studying all the different faiths, Christian faiths, non-Christian faiths. She kind of she read the Quran. She became very well versed in the different faiths.
I don't remember anyone sitting me down and telling me, oh, there's a God. But I always knew there was a God. Like I was just born knowing, I guess, best way to describe it.
Yeah, you had him in a bottle for a while there.
Yeah, I did. He came and vacationed with me. But so I started on this, that led me to this spiritual path that lasted pretty much most of my life and still continues, where I had this underlying fear of, well, I don't want to choose the wrong religion, and then find out, oh, you messed up because I don't want to disappoint God, because I wanted to know, well, where am I supposed to go? Where am I supposed to be, And when I hit my 30s, my life dramatically changed by a couple of miraculous events that not only answered that question, but much, much more. And so now I don't say, like, if someone asks me, they'll ask me, like, are you Christian or are you born again or whatever? I'll be like, well, I'm just a believer. I love all of it. I love the things in the Catholic faith. I do the rosary. I wear the Miraculous Mary medal. Because I've seen, again, witnessed experiences, but I don't put God in a bottle anymore, and I don't put him in a box. I think he's bigger than all of us, and I think he has a purpose and a plan for every one of his children, and I'm not going to tell someone else who might be born again or Baptist or Buddhist or whatever, well, you're wrong, you're on the wrong path. Because I don't know God's plan for them, and I don't know, he may have them exactly where he needs them to be to learn exactly what they need to learn at that exact moment in time, because it's going to lead to something greater. So I don't interfere. I know he's got it.
All of this a backdrop to the real story in this podcast episode, a prayer and a statement by God.
I don't know how to quite start it, but I got pregnant back in 92 with my 5th child. and I was finalizing a divorce. My fiance was finalizing his divorce. We had met. He had a daughter from a previous marriage. I had 4 from previous. So we were being the Brady Bunch, and he felt that the pregnancy was the worst possible time, and he was scared and not ready, and he didn't want me to go through with it. And so we battled and we argued and we battled and argued more. And finally, he's like, I don't know if I can do that. And I was like, okay. So finally, I got to the point where I was like, if this is what I'm not going to force this on you. I'm not going to force fatherhood on you, but I'm going against my personal belief. I'm not doing what I want to do, and it's gonna destroy us. I want you to know, if I have to go end this pregnancy, it ends us. And so I, prayed about it a lot, and I kept asking God, please, God, I'm not strong enough to fight this on my own, and I'm not strong enough. I already have 4 kids. I'm not strong enough to have another 5th one and be a single mom. And, what am I going to say to this kid? Hey, welcome to the world. Your dad split, because I didn't know what he was going to do. He was panicking. And so I said, you're going to have to intervene. I kept saying that. You're going to have to intervene. Jesus, take the wheel, like that song. You're literally going to have to intervene. So I made the appointment. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And on the day of the appointment, we're going to the place where they terminate pregnancies.
So you're gonna give in. You're giving in.
I'm like a sheep to the slaughter, and
Okay.
I kept saying that. And I kept talking to him, my partner, saying, trying to change his mind. And he was just, I think we've talked about it years since. He was like a deer in the headlights. He was just terrified of adding another one because between my 4 and his 1, we already had 5. And he's like, how are we going to take care of them all? And he just panicked. But anyway, so I make the appointment, and I had been there maybe a year before with someone. So it's not like the place was unfamiliar to me. And we get the directions and we go to leave, and we get closer. And when we take this turn where we should be on the right street, the street name's there, it should be right up ahead. Instead, it's like someone took a brick building, like a factory, turned it sideways and dropped it down in the middle of the street. So literally the street went into the wall. Like you could see the street continued, but there's now a brick building, and the side of the brick building is in the way.
A building is now in the road.
In the road.
How are you seeing that the road continues on the other side?
I don't see that it continues on the other side. The building's too big, but I see that the road continues right up to the wall.
Okay, so this thing is just going to smash into the wall.
Yeah, if we keep going, we're going to just smash into the side of a factory wall made of brick. So, my partner, he starts freaking out thinking we got the directions wrong. So he backs up and he backtracks, and he starts really freaking out, and I'll try to shorten the spot. He stopped at a gas station for directions. The directions were correct. We went back again, brick wall. He stopped and asked a traffic officer. Directions are correct. We followed it again, brick wall. He made me get out and call the place on the payphone, because we didn't have cell phones then. And they checked the directions that they had mailed me. Yep, everything was correct. We followed it, brick wall. He went all the way back, because this was in Boston. He went all the way back to the beginning of the Tobin Bridge and followed it from the beginning of going into that area, step by step, brick wall. He did this probably for about a good 40 minutes. And the whole time I'm just sitting in the car. I won't even look at him. I'm looking out the window. My eyes are like saucers. I'm stunned. And I'm almost afraid to breathe. I'm almost like, could this be? Could he be saving me and my kid? Because I didn't want to do this, And it was almost like I didn't dare breathe. I didn't dare break the. I was afraid, like a fragile bubble, it would be gone, So I just stared out the window in shock, and he kept trying to get there. He tried, I'd say, about a good 15 times, and every time, no matter what he did, brick wall. Finally,
is he going around the blocks? Is he trying?
He's going around the blocks. He's getting out and talking to the cops. He stopped at a couple of gas stations that were in that neighborhood. he, like I said, made me call and got out of the car with me and stood. So, you know how you put the phone so two people can hear? Stood there and listened to them say, as I read the directions slowly to them, yep, that is exactly correct. You're about 5 minutes away. You should be here. So,
Wait a minute.
yeah,
This is too good. This is too
I
good.
literally
This.
entered the twilight zone.
Yes, you
So,
were. You had everything but Rod Serling.
So he's driving his car and he's getting more and more road ragey too. So he's driving his car up, trying to go up and around or whatever. And all he would get is brick wall.
No matter
what he did.
how he tried to approach, brick wall.
No matter how he tried to approach, the road stopped into the wall.
So not just that one road, but every road basically had a brick wall.
If he tried to go around to the other side, brick wall. If he tried to, take side streets, there would be dead ends and there was no way to get over to that part, and there was just no getting there. He just kept backing up and trying. Finally, he goes all the way back to the beginning again of the Tobin Bridge. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to try the directions right from the beginning again. Because he had already done that 3 times. He had already gone back to the very beginning of when the directions began and followed it step by step, and it would still be brick wall. So I'm thinking, okay, he's going to try for round 4. And as he goes back, all of a sudden I happen to look up and notice that instead of, say, heading left to head back that way, he's heading right, which is heading toward the North Shore, heading home. And I look over at him for the first time, and I said, "What are you doing? You're going the wrong way. This takes us back to the North Shore." And all he said, and he's got his hands clenched on the steering wheel, he's like, "Obviously, I can't defeat your God." and one tear, just one tear, slid out from underneath his dark sunglasses, and he's like, "I'm afraid, but we're going to have to make it work. I guess we're having a child." And I just started crying, and we went home and we had a long talk. And that's when he confided he was just terrified. He wouldn't be able to afford to feed us all. And we went forward, and we had this beautiful miracle little girl who turned out there was a reason God was putting in extra time to make sure she showed up, because she's not your average kid.
I got to ask something though. In the end, your husband with that tear and your God, and he's mad, but he also realizes he's up against God. Did that change? Did it change him?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How?
He's not what I'd call religious, but he's way more spiritual. He's way more kind. He's more, I don't know, he's just more loving. And he became he was a good father, but he became a better father after that. And oddly enough, she's the light of his life. I mean, he loves all the children. He loves them all. And he loves them all in their own unique, special way, but that's his baby. You know what I mean? So it definitely had a deep, profound effect on him. And he doesn't, when I talk to him about God, he doesn't roll his eyes at me anymore and huff and be like, "Oh God, here she goes. Yeah. God. No, now he's just like, yeah, I know." So he's way more of a believer.
What a crazy experience. Wall.
Yeah.
Wall.
Beautiful.
Wall. How long?
Wall.
How long did the wall? How long was this driving around going on?
Probably about, I'm estimating, between 40 minutes to an hour of trying to get there. Yeah, because he's pretty stubborn, and
I keep
like
saying,
I said,
did you hear what God just said? What a statement by God.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop a factory in the middle of the road.
What a commentary on life.
Yeah, and like I said, she was meant to be.
Kelley's baby was saved for the moment, and the pregnancy went fine. Kelley was actually scheduled for a C-section. It was going to be on a Monday at 11 a.m., Monday to 11 a.m. But trouble happened, and Kelley knew it. She just knew instinctively there was something going on. Something didn't feel right.
Sure enough, as I knew, I was in full labor. So they're like, "Well, we're going to have to do your C-section now. We're not going to be able to do it at 11 in the morning." This is now, by the time they got me in and ready, it's now after midnight. So it's Monday now, the day she was supposed to have her C-section. And long story short, she was born Monday at 3 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. The cord was wrapped more times around her neck than both the obstetricians. They actually called in a second one because they couldn't believe it. She was so tangled up that had she not triggered labor when she did, she would have been a stillborn at 11 a.m. She wouldn't have made it. So the doctors even joked that she pulled a 911. And the funny thing is, she was born on 11/9, and she weighed exactly 9/11. I'm telling you, God's got a sense of humor. So I was like, okay, that's the second time God has personally intervened in this child's life, more than you'd normally see. And then came the reason. At 3 years old, you might want to sit down if you're not sitting down for this one. At 3 years old, one day, she came up to me and she crawled up on my lap and she put her little hands on each side of my face and she said, "Mama, look at me." And I looked down at her. I'm like, "I'm looking at you." She goes, "I got to tell you, you're the best mommy in the whole wide world." I said, "Well, you're the best baby girl in the whole wide world." She goes, "No, Mama, look at me." Like this was important. And she's like, "I toasted you. I promise next time I'm going to toast you again." And I went, "What?" And now I'm getting goosebumps because, again, I don't know if I even believe that stuff, I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, "When I was with God in heaven, I looked down and I toasted you. And I promise you're the best mommy in the whole world. I'm going to choose you again." And she told me this at age 3. And as she grew a little bit over the years and she became more articulate with language, I will condense this here because this went over her growth. She started to tell me more. And because now she had the words for it. And she told me that basically she remembered before she was born. I get choked up with this. She remembered standing with this being made of incredible light, and that the lights and colors there are unimaginable. We can't even imagine. The brightest rainbow doesn't compare to the colors there. She told me that the love you feel and the joy, there's nothing on earth to compare to it. She goes, "There's not even words for it." And she was with this being, and they talked again with no words, like that telepathic thing you hear about, which I hadn't heard. I didn't even know about near-death experiences back then, I looked into it since and know now, but that was the kind of conversation they were having. And she said there were other beings behind him, but she was mainly focused on this one being beside her. And they were made of light. That's how she described them. They were made of they glowed. They just glowed. And she said they looked down at the earth. She goes, "You could see the earth." He had me look down and I saw you, and they wanted me to choose you. There was a reason they wanted me to choose you, but I'm not allowed to remember the reason. But it was ultimately my choice. And she goes, "And I picked you because," this is where it gets hard. She goes, "Because your light was the brightest one in that area." And I'm like, "What do you mean, my light?" And I goes, "What was I doing? Was I riding my bike? Was I doing dishes?" She goes, "No, Mommy, when we look down, we don't see the actual people. We all see their lights. And yours was the brightest in the whole area." To this day, I try to keep my light as bright as possible. I try to send God a beacon. And she told me this, and I'll tell you something. She's 27 now. She hates when I talk about it because to her it's like, I don't want any attention on me. And in all the years, even as a child, because I got investigative, I'm a brain nerd, so I would ask her questions, to see if her story changed or it embellished, or she was doing it to get attention or anything. Nothing. Her story never deviated even a drop. She never used it to get attention. In fact, she would only talk about it if I brought it up. And then she'd be like, "Okay, Mom, enough." And I remember one time when she was 7, she was sitting on the couch watching Powerpuff Girls. And I sat down next to her on a summer day and I looked over at her and I said, "Hill, you know how you remember before you were in Mommy's tummy?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's half watching the TV, half listening to me like, "Oh God, my mother's at it again. She's going to want to hear the story again." And I said, "Why do you think God let you remember?" And she looked shocked. All of a sudden I got her full attention. She goes, "Doesn't everybody?" And I went, no, honey. That's why I keep asking, no, I don't remember. No, most people don't remember there. She goes, that's really sad. And that's all she said. She thought everybody knew. She thought everybody knew.
She thought everybody remembered too. She still remembers.
She still remembers. She said to me, she still remembers all the details. She calls it up because that's what she called it when she was little. So she still, even as an adult now, calls it up.
This goes away with everybody. I only know one other person who remembers this. This goes away when you're, 3, 4, 5 years old and you get seduced into this world. She has a rare gift. Where is she going in her life? Because this is such a rare gift that God gave her this.
I don't know. And it's her oldest siblings used to give me a hard time saying, oh, you spoil her. You're so overprotective of her because she's the baby. And I kept trying to explain to them, no, it's not because she's the baby. It's because she's special. This is a special gift God gave me, and I can't mess it up. I have to raise her right and protect her and watch over her and make sure that she's good. And you know what's funny? She's 27 now, and I can honestly tell you, I love all my children. I have a stepdaughter who's my daughter, as far as I'm concerned. I have a goddaughter who's my daughter. So my family has grown, and I'm a fierce mama bear for all of them. But she's different, and she's always been different. And she was a joy, a true light and a joy to raise. She never got grounded. She never rebelled as a teen. She never snuck off and snuck a cigarette. All the things that all the other kids did, she just didn't. She's just good.
Is she married? Got kids? What kind of work does she do? What is she doing?
No, she still lives with me right now.
Okay.
She was born with my XLH, so she does have some disability. She has physical disability because of it. She's had surgeries on her legs. I think she's still got 1 foot over there and 1 foot here, so she's not. She's loving and kind, and people. It drives her nuts. People are drawn to her.
I choose you, and I choose you again.
Yeah. And she, according to her, she's saying in our next life, I don't know if I believe that or not, but I'm leaving that up to God. I don't even want to tackle that dilemma. But if there is such a thing, she says she's choosing me again. And because my light shines really bright, I guess.
Okay, a little sidebar here, because I think I might know what she's talking about. She might have seen a preview of something. We talked about it a bit during the Blind Faith Live podcast, about the 1,000 years of peace, of heaven on earth that'll come after the Antichrist, which comes after Christ coming for the church, the best of the best. We talked about God's mercy, God's incredible mercy to us, because, the angels, when the third of them fell, they had all the information they needed to make better decisions than that. We're still veiled here, aren't we? We're veiled, and God understands that, and God is a merciful God. And so what we talked about during that 1,000 years is that in terms of a second time, that those who are right now in temporary hell, because that's not final judgment, that's temporary hell, that they would kind of have the slate cleaned, and able to come back during that 1,000-year time for a second shot to be given all of the information about how good God is. And then at the end of the 1,000 years, and remember, this is a time where if you only live to 100, something's wrong with you. But at the end of the 1,000 years, evil would be let out again for a short period of time. And let's see if they can do a little better in their decision-making this time and not falling this time. That's so Kelley and her daughter, they're not going to have this issue. What she was saying is kind of a what if I would choose you again. She's not going to need to choose again. Obviously, both of them get it. They have faith and all that. But there are those who have not chosen so well in this life. But God in his mercy would give them a second shot at it.
And she said, that they had her beings, they had a reason. They really were pushing. They were not pushing. They were underlining the importance of this reason that they wanted her to choose me. But there would be no judgment or backlash. It was ultimately completely up to her, she said. She goes, and so they took her to look down at the earth. And she said, I could see the earth, like if I was up in a spaceship. Because I asked her, what do you mean you could see the earth? Like, where were you? And she goes, I don't know where exactly I was. I was in this rainbow of light and love and awesome feeling. She goes, but I could see the earth like you would see it from space. But you see people's lights going. She goes, it's kind of like if you look up at the night sky, Ma, and you see the stars. It's like that in reverse. We see your starlight. We see your light. We see God's light in you.
We shine like the stars. Isn't that cool? You know, we look up at night and we see the stars, all those stars, and heaven looks down on earth and sees all these stars. Isn't that just cool? And there's Kelley with her daughter telling her how brightly she shines. All right, Kelley, I love you. You're the best. You're the best.
And it was great talking to you, and please keep doing what you're doing. Love hearing other people's stories because it validates for me my own. It's very uplifting. It's very inspiring. And as soon as your podcast lands, I'm on it. You know, it's like, it's the highlight of my week. It's my favorite thing. And I keep telling everybody that'll listen, oh, you got to check this out. You got to check out this podcast, you know, because it's variety, you know, it's a perfect balance where it's not too, as I call it, Bible thumpy, you know. It's real. It's everyday people going through everyday experiences, you know, and finding their path and seeing God in their life, you know, and how he works through them and with them. And each experience is different. Sometimes it is a near-death experience. Sometimes it is a miraculous healing. Sometimes it's my crazy path. But it's all real, and that's what makes it work. That's the God essence, you know, that he is with us individually and as a whole, you know.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Thank you so much, Kelley. I do want to reflect a little bit more about how we shine. I like that, looking up to the stars, and we see the stars shine, and heaven looks down at us, and they see us shine. I love that. That's a beautiful way of how Christ lives in us. Christ is the light of the world, and everyone around us should see that light. Heaven should be able to see that light shining up to heaven. That is beautiful. So going back to the beginning of this episode, in Almost Heaven, West Virginia, do I believe God is shooting off a flare gun? Yeah. It was the last state that had nobody diagnosed with the virus. The number one state outside the Bible Belt. When you add it up all together, church-going, praying daily, God is an integral part of my life. There's West Virginia, almost heaven. You know, if you look around the world, where's the church growing? South America, Africa. Is the virus hitting there nearly as hard? No. Flare gun? The Pew Research again, same questions. You know, the daily prayer rate's up 70%. In fact, in some areas, 80, 90% in those areas. Actually, you know, there's some good news here in the U.S. We're an anomaly. We are an outlier in terms of rich nations. Nobody prays like we do. Nobody prays like the UK and Germany, you know. You'd call those rich countries. Their prayer rate every day is about 10%. Here in the U.S., again, very close to South America and Africa, about 2/3. That's pretty good as the world goes, you know. And I think a beautiful sign for the U.S. in the long game in all of this about prayer and worship. And again, at this time in the world, you just look at the Bible. You look at Hosea, chapter 6. Come back to the Lord. Here we are in Lent. We're out here in the desert. We're just getting creamed out here in the desert. It's just stripped away of so many things. Hosea, come back to the Lord, and he will heal us. He struck us, but he will bind our wounds. He will revive us on the second day. We'll rise on the third day. Hosea. In this season of Lent, this season of repentance, this season of penance, this season out in the desert. And he's reminding us there's a resurrection. We're headed for a crucifixion and a resurrection. And we're tied to that crucifixion right now in our pain. And there is redemptive power in it. There is power in all this pain against evil, against that virus, against the virus of that other invisible virus called sin and devil, and we don't even see it creeping all around us. We don't see that either. And it's infecting us as well. It seems obvious, but I hope that we all see that we need to be praying more every day, that he's listening to our prayers all the time. You know what he'll do? He'll even drop a factory in the middle of a road as an answer to prayer. Yeah, I think he's active in the world. Yeah, I think so. Keep shining. They're watching. They're watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing your stories. You have an encounter moment, please let me know at touchedbyheaven.net. Our Patreon shout out this week. Oh, Julie. Thank you, Julie. Do you love me? Do you remember that song? Julie Abadi. Julie, thank you so much for supporting us through Patreon. If you'd like to do the same, if these episodes are a blessing to you and you'd like to help us out, you can go to this episode 102 and click through, or go to patreon.com, patreon.com. Look for Trapper Jack. And of course, there's now more content on Sundays on YouTube. Look for Trapper Jack Speaks. Look for that channel on YouTube. And Trapper Jack Speaks is now a Facebook page. Videos coming out on Sunday. More content, different topics. So I'll see you there in video form, all right? And I'll see you next week here on the podcast. Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.